Hello, my dear Franken friends, and welcome to Spookyou, your one-stop shop for all things ghastly and ghoulish. I'm your host, Barnabas Vixen. How horrible of you to join us. Curl up, invite your friends, and by all means, make sure those lights are out. That way it's harder to tell what may or may not be lurking around you. There's nothing like a good mystery, am I right? Tonight will feature a singular tale of devilish design, curated by those wicked weavers of woe. And without further ado, allow me to pass the reins on over to our vivacious voiceover virtuoso, Trey Falco, for tonight's sinister story. Please keep all limbs inside covers at all times. We wouldn't want anything to go missing now, would we?
As my consciousness came back to me in pieces, I knew I didn't want to open my eyes. I didn't remember why yet. The only reasoning I had was this thick film of dread that clung to my body, blocking my airways, forcing me to breathe heavily. Then I realized I was lying on my back, facing the ceiling. I could never fall asleep like that, not naturally. I felt how cold my body was and the way my wet clothes helped gravity pin me to the floor. And then I heard it. I heard the distant sound of chewing. All at once my muscles tightened in fear despite my effort to keep relaxed. If it was nearby, I desperately didn't want it to know I was awake now. Slowly, agonizingly slow, I opened my eyes, just a crack. It wasn't in the room. My muscles finally listened to me and relaxed, releasing the shuddering breath they had trapped. My eyes opened fully, unwillingly. My foray in numbness had allowed me to forget what a mess I was in. To put it bluntly, I'd briefly forgotten how truly fucked I was. Ignoring the full body ache that almost immobilized me, I brought my hands to my face and cursed under my breath, over and over and over, silently thrashing about in anger and frustration, as if someone had hit the mute button on my freak-out. I wished I could just take a remote and turn the whole thing off. I didn't care if I stopped existing. I just wanted this to stop, and I wanted it to end. But it didn't stop, and it couldn't. It only seemed to become more real the further I panicked. Air growing heavier, thicker, my muscles beginning to throb from the pain, that fucking chewing getting louder. And I stilled as I realized I could make it stop. I could end this. Calm now, I gazed down at my clothes, feeling as though my mind were detached from my body and from the situation. It was all much clearer like this. My eyes landed on the giant patches of sticky red masking the original color of my shirt. All the warmth had leached out of it along with the life that was now far gone. Her blood was probably the only part of her left now, stuck to me as if for protection of her remains. I couldn't protect shit. The memory of her face fought to the surface of my mind, and it was enough to break my detachment from the situation, reminding me of exactly what could go wrong if I fucked up. Before my mental state could cycle back around to hopelessness, I forced myself to my feet and began to limp for the door on the other side of the cramped, dark storage room I had crawled into to die. I gently pushed the door open.
Hello, listener. Barnabas here, and I'd like to take a moment to talk to you about something that's very near and dear to our hearts here at Spookyou. Blood. That succulent scarlet, the crimson cascade of delicious viscera. We can't get enough of it, and we hear you have plenty. That's why we've partnered with Dr. Acula's Blood Bank. Doc Acula is a medically licensed professional specializing in the removal and storage of that sweet life juice that flows through your veins. With your contribution, you'll be able to feed hundreds of starving vampirites with a single donation. And think of the tax write-off. Am I right? Call today for your free consultation and see what you can do to help your community. Don't forget to bring some form of identification, proof of residency, that way we know which community vault to file away your precious cargo, and a notarized copy of your most recent will. Consultation usually takes a few minutes, while your donation will last a lifetime. Oh, Dr. Acula's Blood Bank. Proudly supporting impoverished vampire communities for over 3,000 years. Thank you for allowing us to get that message off our chest and implant it into your prefrontal cortexes. We now return you to your stories.
Hunched over a sprawled figure facing the wall with its back to me, the thing that was once Anne, now a massive, translucent-skinned creature with greasy piles of gore spilling from gaping wounds in its mutated body, tore another mouthful from the corpse's leg. I heard the noise but refused to think any further about what it could mean, and I was paying for it. My hand clamped to my mouth, eyes squinted almost shut, both in disgust and to hold in the wave of nausea that threatened to pour out. The whole room was so quiet. Even the sound of wet crunching was muffled, reminding me eerily of when a dog gnaws calmly on a bone in its bed. Desperately, I clenched my bladder so I wouldn't piss myself in fear. James had done that when he hid under one of the beds. I was under the other bed at the time, and we were both paralyzed as we watched it slump into the room, only its shuffling feet visible in the blue light from the window. Instantly, it had picked up on the smell, dragging him screaming from safety, the shrieks turning to a soft gurgle as it ripped a chunk from his throat with its teeth, spattering his blood on the carpet, next to my face. I didn't want to be like James. The common room I now found myself in with the creature was separated from the kitchen by a low wall the same height as its countertops. I would find my tools in there. All I had to do was get there quietly, and before it finished its meal. I was sure it could hear, just not that well. I opted to shuffle sideways, keeping my eyes on it in case it decided to turn around. No amount of swallowing was making my mouth any less dry. Unblinking, I stared hard, searching for any sign of it noticing me, but all it did was chew. 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 Crunch, as it bit off the next chunk. I couldn't tear my eyes away, and I couldn't reach up to wipe away the tears that rolled down my cheeks. The sudden impact of my foot with an unseen object, the sound of metal rattling across the floor sent a cold stab of fear through my center. I froze, but the rattling continued, slowly, mockingly dying out over the course of the next few seconds. And then the creature froze too, as if it had been caught doing something bad. Slowly, it turned. Within fractions of a second, I noticed how disgustingly clear its eyes were compared to its sickly pallor and shriveled nose. The eyes were so human. It bared its blood-slicked teeth at me in a meaty grin and bolted forward. I screamed mindlessly as I sprinted for the kitchen, hurtling the wall and almost eating shit as my injured leg buckled beneath me. The interruption of my escape forced me to glance behind, eyes scanning the room feverishly for the creature. It was skittering towards me, across furniture, on all fours, its limbs held outward from its body like a humanoid spider. The noise I made, too, was more animal than human as I turned and wrenched the alcohol cupboard open, grabbing one of the biggest bottles by the neck and swinging back around as the creature jumped towards me. I brought down the bottle as hard as I could onto its skull, knocking it off its trajectory with a fleshy clunk. The bottle hadn't shattered as I hoped, and the thing was soon lurching to its feet, swinging its arms blindly in my direction. My screaming grew louder than I had ever thought possible, only stopping between agonized breaths. My ribs had snapped beneath the force of its limbs. I swung again, aiming for the edge of the counter this time, and was rewarded with the sound of glass breaking in the side of the amber liquid covering the creature as it mauled my leg with its teeth. But there was no victory yet as I watched my flesh come away in pieces from the bone. My right arm flailed upwards at an awkward angle where I was pinned to the lower cupboards. After a few misses, I found the handle of our random crap drawer and yanked it out, smashing it under the creature's head and scattering the contents. It paused in a daze, a sizable dent in its skull, and I took the opportunity to wrench forward, reaching for the object of my efforts, which had landed to the left. I snatched up the box as the creature regained its senses and flung my body with a furious hiss towards the end of the kitchen. I landed heavily, but managed to raise my upper body as it stalked forward. Then I struck a match. Its eyes widened in realization as it pounced forward, but not fast enough as I flung the match to meet it in midair. Unfortunately, I was much too close still, and as the creature ignited a wave of fire, my clothes sprouted flames of their own. I threw myself to the ground trying to put them out and gain more distance between myself and the creature as it crawled towards me, much slower now, but dragging itself across the floor persistently. I stood, gasping as the last of the flames were smothered, noticing I had stopped screaming at some point along the line. The room was quiet again, but for the sound of the small bonfire eating away at the thing, collapsing without a sound onto the floor. My mind must have shut down at that point because I couldn't tell you for how long, but I stared into those flames and I watched that fucker burn. There was a decent-sized pool of blood around my ankles by the time I came to again. My own that flowed from my wounds mingling with that of the monster which had ingested my friends, using them to fuel itself. Now my main concern is dealt with. I have the luxury of using my phone to check the internet and, for the first time since this began, to read through the panicked messages from the others in the building. Great. One down, the rest of the dorm to go.
Welcome back, my darling deviants. Well, tell me, did you enjoy that twisted tale? Of course you did. I knew you had that air about you, that hunger for the horrific and the macabre. So, did we spook you? If not, then file a complaint with our complaint department detailing all accounts of non-spookiness you found in this video, and we'll get back to you in 2 to 3 millennia. Give or take a business eon or two. However, if you've enjoyed what you've just heard this evening, then make sure you leave a like on this video and annihilate that subscribe button. Such a small act of obedience is exactly what we need to put the food on the table around here. There's only so many days we can have refried kidney and toe jam hash before I'm absolutely sick of it. Spoiler alert, that ship sailed long ago. Now, I must bid you adieu. I've many things to take care of, and this outro is eating into my day off. Run along now. Have no fear, we'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday to bring you another terrible tale. Go forth, my ghastly gang, and stay spooky.